this became basically a mission for me, I started to look to these people, like Banana George. Initially, I would say it was my grandmother. Now, that wasn't a choice to me that have always been an inspiration. Mack is another person. He's about 10 or 15 years older than me. Oh, well, then there's Uncle Mike, too. He just turned 70. He's still flipping the hydrofoil.
Welcome to the Get Stoked Podcast with Paul Stokes. Life lessons learned on the water that you can apply to everyday life. Now, here's Paul.
All right, thank you for tuning in to the Get Stoked Podcast. This month, we're featuring Tony Klarich.
Hey, Paul.
How you doing, man?
It's a little early, but I'm going to get stoked right now.
Yeah, right on. So we got him a little bit up early. He's from California, but we're in Wisconsin here at Wisconsin's think tank. And Tony is this guy that back in the 80s, reading every water ski magazine, is a big fan. I first noticed him doing a TikTok on a slalom ski, doing a flip, wake to wake on a slalom ski, behind a boat. Back in the day, this was before wakeboarding and all these other toys that we now flip and twist and turn on, besides a trick ski. And he was taking a slalom ski and taking it extreme, and he became known as the world's greatest hot dog skier. Wouldn't you agree, world's greatest?
Well, if I really think about it, that's probably true. And
There's no doubt.
I would have to say there was another thing about back in the day. It was low tow and low wakes. It's an entirely different experience than today.
No question,
Yeah.
No question. Things have come so far. So not only has water skiing and wake sports come so far, but Tony has as well. And his lifetime of water skiing has culminated to him getting an award of distinction in the Hall of Fame, the Water Ski Hall of Fame at USA Water Ski, just next month. So such an honor. And then also he has developed these goals of 50 of 50, skiing on 50 different types of objects, essentially, on his 50th birthday. And now his next goal is celebrating the 100th anniversary of water skiing. 100 years ago in 2022 is when Ralph Samuelson first water skied.
1922.
1922, yeah. Well, in 2022,
It will be the
will have
100th
been 100
anniversary,
years.
the centennial.
Yeah. Yep. So Tony is so passionate about the sport that's been so important to him that he really wants to celebrate something special for that anniversary. And thank you so much for joining me today, Tony.
Right on.
And out of the gates, man, I just want to hear a little bit about that project.
Well, you mentioned the 50 for 50, and that's where it all started because I did ACTS, the history of wakeboarding, the history of hydrofoiling. And as the 100th anniversary was coming up, I wanted to do something special for the centennial, and I just rolled from that into basically the same thing, but including the entire community. So the Wake Ski 100 is going to be a 2-day festival where we basically put the entire history of water skiing on the water from start to finish, every single bit, from Ralph Samuelson inventing skiing, the creation of show skiing, swivel skiing, wakeboarding, kneeboarding, hydrofoiling. It's all going to be there live on the water. That's going to be one part of it. And then the secondary part of it is going to be the historical nature of it, and that is honoring and preserving all the people that did special things throughout the year. So there'll be that history basically in a series of 100. So 100 of the all-time greatest slalom photos, 100 of the all-time greatest barefooting photos. Okay, so you're pretty excited about
cool.
that one.
This is cool.
And it's going to be amazing. And so far the community's been extremely receptive, and we're here to basically see what the will of the people is. And the will of the people is, let's do this.
Well, it's amazing, and I'm really excited, and we got to wait till 2022, but there's a lot to be done between now and then.
Yes.
You can learn more about it. Tony can't do it by himself. He needs a lot of help,
Yes.
Both financially, but more organizationally. So if you have old school equipment, maybe you have an old school boat, any kind of history you can share, we want you to get involved. So you can go to wakeski100.com. You can also go to TonyKlarich.com And these are resources where you can see what's going on, learn more about Tony, learn more about this 100th celebration. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be the biggest event ever in water skiing. I mean, that's my goal. I really believe that that can happen. I have a vision that that's going to happen. I mean, think about what's going to be backstage. The largest single collection of everything in water skiing, and all the people. We're honoring the people, so they're all going to be there.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
So excited, excited, yeah.
So, back in the 80s, I see this guy in the magazine pushing the limits, being creative, really taking the spirit of water skiing. A lot of us see the competitions, but really it's enjoying doing soul turns out on glass water, not necessarily cutting buoys or doing tricks and different techniques. It's the spirit of water skiing, and that's deep in Tony's soul. And we saw him back in the day appearing in magazines, and now it's culminated all the way to getting an award of distinction at the USA Water Ski Hall of Fame, big deal. And it's also culminating into this big vision of this amazing event. So over those years, you have to have surrounded yourself around amazing people that mentored you, you looked up to, you strived to be, you wanted to be like, you wanted to learn from. So tell me a little bit about the people you must have surrounded yourself around to get where you are today.
Absolutely. Now, it's fairly common knowledge that you are a sum of the people that you surround you with. You often hear that the number is 5, or you listen to some of these motivational type speakers, and I was completely unaware of this back in the day, but as this starts getting on the radar, I've really become intentional about who those people are and how they fit into your life, because it's like anything. If you surround yourself with people who are negative or draw you down or of low moral character, it's easy to slip into that.
Absolutely.
If you surround yourself with average people, well, it's hard to be exceptional in an average world. Now, if you surround yourself with people that you aspire to be like, not only can you be inspired by them personally, but you can see what they're doing. You can learn from them personally. You can get that up close stuff, and you can see that there is a pathway to get where they are. So specifically people, and my goal has been to be able to perform athletically at a high level, deep into age, Initially, I would say it was my grandmother. Now, that wasn't a choice, because you're just with your grandparents, but I was inspired in her 70s and 80s. She took on this endurance skiing. I mean, she always did it, but especially she learned how to hydrofoil at 76, and then every year from age 79 to 88, she rode her hydrofoil to Catalina Island and back.
Oh, that's incredible.
That's 52 miles across open ocean in her 80s, multiple times.
Amazing.
So when you're watching this, it's highly inspirational. And when this became basically a mission for me, I started to look to these people, like Banana George, who I was fortunate enough to spend a fair amount of time with. He used to have a house at the Colorado River where we skied, and he would come out, and surprisingly enough, he didn't really barefoot that much with our crew. He mostly hydrofoil. I mean, a lot of people have seen the shot of him standing up, or him being Banana Claus, or the girl riding on his shoulder. So we would ride the stand-up foils. We would ride the sit-down foil. And just watching him and hearing those stories from him and seeing him do it, literally, was such an inspiration. I look to other skiers that are older than me that have always been an inspiration. Mack is another person. He's about 10 or 15 years older than me. He rips. And you see what
to this day,
he rips still to this day. And
Does he still do the body slide?
He still does the body slide.
Oh, awesome.
He's still out there paddling, getting ready for surfing. He's still out there working out every day. He's getting his sets in. He's still giving, 4 lessons a day often in the summertime. And it's an inspiration. So when you have those people around you, and that is also your goal, you can't help but be elevated to a higher level, which we all aspire to.
Yeah, that's amazing. The people you surround yourself, like you said, they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang around the most.
Yeah.
But typically it's more than 5 people that you're putting yourself around, and it's no secret that you're over 50, right?
Yeah.
You did your 50 for 50 a
Yeah.
couple years ago,
54
right?
now, yeah.
And this gentleman, Mike Mack, he's you said 15 years older than you?
I think he's in his mid to late 60s
so
now.
well into his 60s and still getting
Yeah.
after it. And
Oh, well, then there's Uncle Mike, too. He just turned 70. He's still flipping the hydrofoil, and he's still out there jumping the waves on his jet ski, 10 or 15-foot jump. So, again, you look and see what is possible, and it's just such an inspiration. I mean, that's the way I do it. That's the way people have, other, wiser people than I have said that it is. And we follow the teachings of people before us,
Yeah.
and then adapt them for our own purposes.
Yeah, no question. You mentioned your grandma, and I know there's more people in your family that are pretty active in skiing. In fact, I believe your wife last night, speaking to her, she said that you were at a family function or something, and I think it was your mom said, "All right, boys, let's go. We're going skiing."
Yeah.
So it's rooted in your family. Tell me about that circle and that experience of skiing with your family.
The entire family has been, skiing at high levels. Uncle Nick was, skied for Tommy Bartlett
cool.
for a number of years. He skied at Marine World for a number of years. He was a great distance jumper. He was a great barefooter. He did it all. And growing up, I watched him do stuff too. Uncle Pat, another great skier, still hydrofoiling in his 60s. But he was more into the boat racing aspect of stuff. So he liked to go fast in boats. He at one time actually held the world record for speed and outboards, some crazy number.
Actually in the boat?
In the boat, driving the boat,
Because the Catalina race where they race on the ski
Yeah.
behind a fast boat, I've never seen that, just in magazines and videos, and that's an amazing.
It's amazing. It's funny you mention it because my experience of the Catalina race was that, as is often the case, it involved a couple of cocktails, and I was trying to be the world's best tuber, and somebody said, if you're going to be the world's best tuber, the Catalina race is happening this weekend. You have to tube the Catalina race. So I did.
Right. I remember that
Yeah.
footage.
52
Oh my
miles.
gosh.
That was pretty crazy. And surprisingly enough, 52 miles in a tube in open
Wear
ocean
you out.
is
Oh
not
my
the smartest thing in the world. I was feeling the effects of the tube for weeks after that.
You definitely took tubing to that next level. That is crazy.
And another thing with Catalinas, you mentioned, the family was compelling me to follow in the footsteps of Uncle Mike, who had won Catalina in his age division, several times. My cousins won Catalina in his age division several times and set records. So I had to have my step too. This was before the tubing. And we were out practicing a couple days before, and at that day, the Catalina ferry boat had huge waves, 4-foot waves, and it was a very flat day. So we hit these series of 4 to 5 foot rollers at speed, which was like in the 60s.
Dangerous.
No, it was more than dangerous. So we went up, hit the first, I just looked up and all of a sudden the rope went slack. I'm like, what? And I looked up and the boat was like gone. So we jumped, he jumped off the first boat. Pat was driving, Mike was observing, and it broke the entire nose of the boat off right in front of the bow hook. So we were literally dead in the water in the middle of the ocean for over an hour.
Oh my goodness.
That was not the most pleasant experience in the world.
Yeah.
Because there's sharks out there. There really are sharks out there.
Right.
It was a little scary. So fortunately, about an hour in, somebody must have called. This is the days before cell phone. Someone must have called. So we had the Harbor Patrol come out and literally hook up to that bow eye seconds before the entire boat went down. But more importantly, save us.
Wow.
So, there's
That's
another family
incredible.
thing. There's another striving to be inspired by your family.
Yeah, that's what I was getting
Yeah.
out of that. It's like, you certainly can't choose your family, but you had this extraordinary family that was involved in water skiing, and you got a passion for water skiing. So being surrounded by those uncles and cousins and parents even, and grandparents that were pushing you,
Yes.
motivating you, inspiring you, and you were bought in clearly.
You also realize that you're a part of it. So I've done a couple things in skiing through the years. And when I look back and people say, well, what are some of the most amazing things you do? I could say one of the most, emotional and meaningful moments was before the 50 for 50, there was a 40 for 40. That's where it all started off. And I was inspired by my grandmother to do that because of all her crazy Catalina stuff. And one of the things that I did within that ride was 4 generations behind the boat at one time. So it was my grandmother.
Yeah, I've seen 3 a lot. 4
It was
is
it was my grandmother, my uncle, myself, and my son. And it took us a couple times to get up. It was cold, you know, it was a struggle, but we all made it up. And within that space, I looked to my right, I looked to my left, and I realized that I was part of a family. It wasn't just me. It was like you're this link in a chain that goes on before you and behind you. It was just, I mean, even right now, I'm getting, you know, chills about how exceptional that was and how lucky I was, and just fantastic. And it was filmed, so it's out there someplace too. Yeah.
You know, one thing I'll mention right now is it's something I talk to people a lot about. It's like, when I look back at my childhood, I think the sport of water skiing or tow sports, whatever you want to call it, is so great, because how many activities are there where you get your family inside of a closed space, right? You're in the boat, no one's going anywhere. You're interacting with each other, everyone's having fun, you're helping each other, you're supporting each other, you're cheering for each other, you're laughing at each other. And there's not a whole heck of a lot of activities that families can do that. Not many sports and activities. I mean, you can go camping or whatever, but this is like this really cool activity that a family can bond together. So I'm personally very thankful for the sport of water skiing.
Absolutely. And they were talking about it last night. Like, where else can you have your dad drive, your mom pull pin, and you be swivel skiing behind the boat? You know, or your sister's there, or you can do multiple people. It's exceptional. Yeah.
So the moral of today's story, you know, we're trying to bring it back to a lesson, right? So clearly Tony has been around a lot of great skiers. We only touched on a few, but there's so many more, right? And he looked ahead up to people, and they impacted him. And what he's beginning to realize now, and I'm sure he's aware of this, is now he is impacting a ton of people. And I know that's something that is important to him, is to, you know, my friend says pass the stoke, which is kind of funny.
Cool.
You know, you get stoked on skiing, and it's like what you do, and you want to pass the stoke to whether it's the next generation or just someone else and inspire them. But it truly is important who you surround yourself with. If you have goals, if you have dreams, if you have visions and places you aspire to go, you need to surround yourself with people that are living that lifestyle. Whether it's, you know, you want a good marriage, you know, find some buddies that have good marriages and be spending time with them. You want to take your career to the next level. For example, I'm in a little networking group, a little mastermind group of professionals, all of who I respect. And we're all motivating each other, teaching each other lessons, helping each other, holding each other accountable, and it's taken us all to the next level. Those are just a couple of examples.
While you were talking, it also has occurred to me that it is super important. It seems so simple to be intentional about this stuff. So often we get caught up in just the moment, really, which is not necessarily a bad thing at times. But we really need to be intentional about the decisions that we make, the people that we hang out with. It's really that intentionality, because that's what gets you to that next level. And you mentioned, you know, kind of passing the torch. I really realized this weekend that that's what happened. And pulling it back to Banana George, he intentionally hung out with younger people.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to feed off their energy to be young.
Yes.
You know, so at a certain age, 54, I mean, I still consider myself middle-aged, certainly. It's starting to be where I'm at these events and you see these young kids, 18 in their 20s, and it's like you can start to draw energy off of them because you've inspired them, but not just that, they're doing amazing things. So it helps to keep you going.
Yeah.
Be intentional.
Be intentional. And maybe it means being intentional about purposely staying away from some people that you know are bad.
100%.
Just a couple of times in my life, I've literally had to unfriend someone, and sometimes it's not easy. All of a sudden, you cut off communications, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" But if you know it's bad for you, you gotta make that small choice, that daily choice.
Well, if I may, for just a moment about that daily choice, you know, one of my things is the Kaizen, which is a Japanese concept of incremental improvement. Sure. And it is not only intentional, but it is that daily choice. And when we want to be great at something, you know, the American way is to keep swinging for the fences. The Japanese way is to make that little improvement day over day. And you don't necessarily see something day over day or week over week, but you keep doing that. You keep staying in the proper lane. You keep making those daily intentional choices. Eventually, you look back and it's like, wow, I really have accomplished a lot. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great insight. You know, great conversation, Tony. I appreciate it.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's all good. You know, make those little choices. Surround yourself with people that are doing the things that are inspiring you and where you want to go, and make those dreams big and go for it. Thanks for tuning in.
Woo.
You can learn more about it. Tony can't do it by himself. He needs a lot of help,
Yes.
Both financially, but more organizationally. So if you have old school equipment, maybe you have an old school boat, any kind of history you can share, we want you to get involved. So you can go to wakeski100.com. You can also go to tonyklarich.com. And these are resources where you can see what's going on, learn more about Tony, learn more about this 100th celebration. It's going to be awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Get Stoked Podcast with Paul Stokes. You can contact Paul at ontheballpaul.com. We look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, stay stoked.
I'm not worried. I think you're more worried than I am.
Of course I am, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get her going.